All right, I think we're ready to get started.
Yay.
I know we got the right after lunch session here, so I hope your opportunity for your food to settle, but not too much that it puts you to sleep. And we got some exciting live demos that we're going to be doing, so hopefully we'll have a good time. We're here to talk about getting the most of your .NET development with Visual Studio. I'm Wendy Briding. I'm a product manager on the .NET team, specifically focusing on Copilot experiences with .NET.
And I'm Allie. I'm a product manager on the Visual Studio Copilot team.
So today we're going to talk about understanding Copilot and its integration with Visual Studio and how it's going to make you the most productive. We're going to go over some key terminology and how to navigate Copilot within Visual Studio. As you've probably seen, how many are using Copilot already? About half. Awesome. So for those who are using Copilot already, you've seen it changes near daily. And so we're going to kind of familiarize you with all the different things that it has to offer and where to find some of the things that you might not know that are there. We're going to dive into some demos and talk about enhancing your productivity with Copilot across the entirety of Visual Studio, from in-editor experiences to the chat and agents and all of that. And then we'll round it up with some kind of best practices and ways that you can be even more successful in your experiences with Copilot.
Good.
All right. So, what is Copilot and how does it work? It uses a LLM, a machine learning model that is trained on large code bases to understand and predict the code and provide you with help in your experiences across the board. It is evolved from just that in-editor suggestions, gray text that we started with a couple of years ago into so much more. And the great thing about Copilot within Visual Studio, outside of using things like just regular ChatGPT, is it has the context of your solution. It knows your code base, and it is providing and continues to provide more of that context to help provide even better suggestions for you and help with your code. It helps really. Our goal with Copilot is to help reduce those mundane tasks, those repetitive things that you don't like to do, kind of get rid of all of that and have Copilot do it for you. So Copilot has full support for .NET, C#, Razor. We are working every day to make that even better and would love to hear any feedback that you have and experiences that you have with using it with C# and Razor and Blazor and Maui and all the different .NET technologies. It provides, as I mentioned, from a long time ago, the auto completions, the code completions that it does. But we've expanded it beyond that, and it will take you to predicting what your next edit will be and providing next edit suggestions. It can help you in generating code snippets. You can even ask it to do whole changes across your entire code base that Allie is going to show us a little bit later. Becomes that pure programmer. And when you take it outside of Visual Studio with the new coding agent that we have, you can even assign things within GitHub to have it doing things in the background while you're doing more code. Just expands your productivity even further. So I've mentioned a lot of different things. I just want to make sure I want to clear up some of the suggestions that we have, the terminologies that we use. Suggestions. This is that gray text. If you've been using Copilot for the last 2 years, you'll be editing. It'll bring up, gray text of either your next line or the next couple of lines. Those we call suggestions. Prompts are what is being asked of the LLM. So everything that is done with large language models starts with a prompt. With suggestions, we are actually sending a prompt in the background that includes the code around where your cursor is and some other things that help it understand and provide that suggestion. When you use the chat, you're providing the prompt on what you want it to do, but we're also providing a system prompt that says you're an AI coding assistant and you're here to help and all these different things. We provide the various contexts that make it understand what your code base is and all of that. That's prompts. Copilot also has what we call instructions, custom instructions, which I think Allie is going to talk about a little bit later, but those are also even more context that you can provide. So we provide the base information about your code base, but you can provide it some. When you're doing something for me, always write unit tests. Always use the latest versions of C#. These basic instructions that you want it to follow with every prompt that you provide it. And those are called instructions. And when we talk about the Copilot chat, there are two different modes right now in Visual Studio. There's Ask mode and there's Agent mode. There was a recent blog post about this, but the basic things around Ask mode is Ask mode provides you the ability to ask it questions and get back answers, but it's not going to update your code for you. It'll provide you with code suggestions that you can click apply, but you're more in control with Ask mode. With Agent mode, it is going to do the updates for you. It is going to work until it has completed the task that you have given it. And so it will continue on and moving through and doing all of those awesome things in Agent mode. And now I'm done talking, and we're going to dive into some demos.
Let's get into it.
All right. And see. Do they switch? It is still showing the presentation.
Hey.
Cancel out of that.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. All right. So I am working with a couple of different dev boxes here. So this is my first one. I'm going to show you, if you aren't using Copilot yet, you'll probably see something like this. It says, sign in, use Copilot for free, all these different things, get started. There's so many different buttons you can click on here. Every single one of them takes you to pretty much the same place to just get you started. Copilot is, you can use most of the all of the features that we're talking about for free. And they will help in build your productivity. So you can click on the get started. You can sign up. If you already have a Copilot, you can sign in and all of that. And I'll click on the get started one.
Yeah, and a new feature is you can also sign in with Google accounts now, which is, we just added that like very recently. So super exciting to see. Even more people can
use Copilot. This is going to take you directly to the sign-in screen. So you can continue if you don't have a GitHub account, you don't want a GitHub account, you can sign in with your Google account. You can sign in with your GitHub account. You can create a GitHub account. This gets you going and ready to go. And now I'm going to jump over to a dev box where I'm already signed in and I've got my code base up and running and all the cool things. Don't want you to have to wait and watch me log in and do all of that stuff. So the next thing I wanted to show is setting up and making sure that you have the right options set to be the most successful. And so here I'm in the tools options, GitHub Copilot settings in the latest version of 17.14, although I think there's an update waiting from this morning, but the latest version besides this morning's. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things that I want to make sure that you have turned on in here. Specifically, I turn on everything. But you want to make sure you have chat mode, agent mode enabled in the chat pane, that you're using MCP server integration. Some of the things that Allie's going to show are going to require both of those to be turned on. Down in completions here, you want to enable next edit suggestions. This provides the suggestions of things you might be thinking about doing next with your code, very important. These debugger and diagnostic settings, if you saw Jesse and Harshada this morning, some of the things that they showed require that those be turned on. The in-editor adaptive paste was shown this morning, and I'm going to show a version of it today. You'll want to make sure that that one is turned on. the rename suggestions. So, as you can see, I have everything turned on. I suggest that there's nothing wrong with turning on everything.
You're getting the most out of .NET development with Visual Studio.
Exactly. And then the Git preview feature, where you can set what you want your Git messages to be. Make sure that you have that feature turned on as well. All right. So in this environment here, I am working in eShop. My version of eShop was an old Java application that my team was tasked to migrate it over to .NET because of how great .NET is. And we're still working through, and there's some tests that hadn't been migrated yet. And so I'm coming into this basket service test, and I'm going to paste in the code. Why is this not my deadbox? That is not my deadbox. Sorry, technical difficulties. My Java code disappeared. Why? Because I can't see that. There it is.
There we go.
There you go. Sorry about that. I'm going to paste in my Java code here. And you see it says tab to adapt the code. So I'm going to tab, and then the little 3 dots come up. Copilot's going to do its thinking. And then it's going to provide me with the updated version of my code. It's going to show me the differences between the Java version and my .NET version. It recognized that I needed .NET, and then I can look through and say, yep, that all looks great. I tab, and now I have my new method converted from Java over to C#.
So handy.
The coolness of adapted paste. I think somebody had asked a question on if you could how well it did that cross-language translation. I use it for Java all the time. I'm a Java programmer of old, and love that feature. So yes. The next thing I wanted to show here. I'm using basket item. Not really familiar with basket items, so I'm going to use this quick describe with Copilot. And this is going to kind of go look at that basket item class, and it's going to provide me with a basic description of what that class is. So if I don't want to have to jump over and see all the details, I can have Copilot provide me with a basic description of what it is. Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what I thought it was. Perfect. Now I do want to make some changes in this basket item class. It doesn't have documentation because, we just don't do documentation when we're doing quick stuff, and we really need to. And so I'm going to do the 3 slashes. It is not triggering. There we go. The 3 dots appear. So it did the initial scaffolding, but when the 3 dots appear, and then now we can see that it has filled in all the information about this class, and I can accept it. It's got my summary, the remarks, all the information that I needed. Copilot fills in automatically for me there.
So helpful. It saved me a lot of time.
So much time. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dive in over here. I'm going to do a little bit of coding. All right. And so in this one, Copilot's already knowing what I want to do because I've done it how many times today. So I'm going to add here that I want to validate my IDs. The problem is we had an issue come up in production where somebody created a shopping cart with over 100 items, and we can't scale to that. So we want to add in some checking that we want to fail gracefully here. So I'm going to check how many IDs that we have. And so I kind of created this little, I want to create this new method here called validate IDs, which isn't created yet. And so I can go in and use generate method, which is going to then generate that method with the basic throw not implemented exception that we're all used to using. Here, you can see that already Next Edit Suggestions is jumping in and saying, hey, I think you might want to do this. And it's filling in what it thinks it can do. I can accept that. But there's also, if I cancel that, now where'd it go? We have this feature where I can implement with Copilot. And this is going to do basically the same thing that the Next Edit Suggestion is. It's just another option of providing that implementation. And so here, it's guessing that I want to check if it's 0. Obviously, we said I want to make sure that IDs is less than 100. So here I want to, and then I can use the old completions that I'm used to fill in the rest of the details there, where it's going to send that it's invalid and that we can't contain more than 100 items. And so that provides me with writing all of that, which would have taken me forever, in pretty quickly. But now I've got a red squiggly. So here I could spend time figuring out why is this doing this to me, or I can come in and I can do fix with Copilot. And so this is going to, now I've got, whenever I have errors or warnings, it's going to say, okay, how do I fix this? It provides me with the diff view here of how I can fix it. Obviously, I was only sending valid responses in my method. Now I'm sending bad requests in my method, and I need to make sure that I update that. And so I accept that, and all is great.
Awesome.
The last thing that I want to show, refactoring can be a pain. Copilot Next Edit Suggestions makes that a lot easier and a lot quicker. My boss said, nobody knows what this available stock available is. Can you rename it to a quantity available? So I'm going to come in and I'm going to change that to quantity available. This is being used across the board, down this all over the place. And so all of a sudden it said there was this arrow and it says, hey, you've got suggestions down here. And so now here it's saying, do you want to change available stock to quantity available here? I tab to accept. It says there's another one. I tab down to it. I tab to accept. There's another one. And it will keep going until I reach the end and I have updated everything. So instead of me having to scroll and find everything, Copilot is doing that all for me. And now my entire file is back to green.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's like Command F for code. It just makes switching things around a lot easier.
Yes, absolutely. And that is the end of my in-editor demo. So I'm going to hand it over to Allie to show us some cool stuff in the chat.
Cool. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about agent mode and MCP and how it can help you in your .NET development. So I was really inspired by Wendy's eShop, and I wanted to see if I could use agent mode to kind of come up with my own version of that. So I have a different version of an eShop that I've been kind of developing with agent mode with some of my, I don't know why this isn't showing up.
Coding.
Yeah, a little bit. Building it from scratch. So I have a Blazor app here that doesn't really want to show up on the screen. It's got this little
spread across. You want to check your settings, make sure you're not
settings. Just enjoy this picture of a animal.
Very pretty wolf. So you can click on her and you can just,
there we go. Okay. I'm going to keep those changes. And now you guys should be able to see my beautiful code here. So I have new eShop that I've been building from scratch. So I'm just going to show you guys what it looks like because I think that agent mode is pretty magical. So you can build some really beautiful .NET apps using just agent mode. But once we get this loaded up here, I want to show you what it looks like. Building, here we go. starting up debugging, but there we go. And there it is. Loading up right now. Here's my new eShop. It's all pretty and it has some Visual Studio like colors and themes, and a couple of sample, techie products in there: smartwatch, gaming mouse, smartphone. We've got a products page. We've got an ability to add some products to your favorites. So you can view your favorites here, and then you can go back and browse more tools. And then we also have a cart functionality where you can see, everything that you've added to your cart and check out. But right now I'm thinking that I want to add a little bit more functionality to this eShop repo. And I actually want to try to do that live for you guys to showcase the magic of agent mode and also MCP. So I'm going to jump back to my code here. And what I'm going to do, so earlier when I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to show you guys today, I actually spec'd out a GitHub issue in the repo for this new feature that I want to add. I'm thinking that I want to give the functionality that you can click on a certain product in the eShop repo and be directed to a new page that's specific to each product that can give a little bit more detail about the product in question, so you can figure out, is this really something that I want to add to my cart, and just make it a little bit more like a real eShop website. So I actually generated this product spec, or this feature spec, with Copilot, so you can see how detailed it is when it's helping out with spec writing and helping me to figure out, the details that I might need to implement a new feature. So I just wanted to show you guys that, but I'm going to jump right back to the code. And I'm going to show you guys, I'm sure you've heard a little bit about MCP, or Model Context Protocol, if you've been attending sessions over the last couple of days. But I'm going to jump into my MCP JSON file and show you guys how this works. So right now I have two servers that are configured in this file. First, I have the GitHub server. This is going to be really helpful for me, and I'm going to showcase this in a second, for how you can actually pull that issue in and have Copilot in agent mode directly in Visual Studio help you to implement that spec that I had written up in that GitHub issue, all without leaving the IDE. The second one that I have here is the Microsoft Docs server. I'm actually going to click reconnect because it looks like we got disconnected. This is these are both remote servers. So as you can see, the configuration is pretty small, and we just have a link that shows that the server itself is deployed on this endpoint here, and we're pulling in that data from that server without having to store the server locally, which is really cool. And we can actually, I'm going to go ahead and show with the GitHub server, we have built-in authentication support with the Visual Studio keychain. So for the GitHub server, I can click auth, and I can see that I'm allowed to choose any accounts that I am logged into with my Visual Studio, and choose one of those to authenticate with GitHub. So right now, that's my personal GitHub account. So that's the one I want to use. So that all looks good to me. But it's awesome that I can authenticate my GitHub server without ever having to leave Visual Studio. And then we also have an awesome experience for inputs for MCP servers. If there's any other variables that you might want to define for a server, we have an awesome experience directly in the IDE that you can define those as well. But yeah, back to the second one here. The second server is the Microsoft Docs. So this, when I'm developing with any .NET projects, this is a really helpful server for me to have installed because it can allow me to reference official Microsoft documentation. So I'm just curious here, if you've ever tried using Copilot with .NET projects, has anyone ever encountered the issue of maybe you updated to the latest version of .NET and then Copilot kind of falls flat? Maybe it doesn't know about the latest features. Has anyone ever experienced that?
Or you're running an MCP server and it doesn't even know what that is because the LLM was trained before MCP even existed.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's, an issue that we recognize. And I think that having the Microsoft Docs server and allowing to reference the latest and official Microsoft documentation when developing with .NET is really helpful, and it's going to help you get the best responses possible. And the team is actually working to hopefully get this shipped directly in with Visual Studio in the future so that you don't even have to configure this manually, and you'll just by default have the greatest reference documentation for .NET projects. So super helpful. So enough rambling about MCP. I don't know if you guys can tell I love MCP. But here, I'm actually going to jump into GitHub Copilot chat, and I'm going to ask it to see if it can find any GitHub issues that are assigned to me in this repo. So let's go ahead and type that out. Find GitHub issues. I'm going to go ahead and send that prompt and see. Hopefully agent mode can pull through for me today. So we're reading some code snippets and we're looking into finding the servers and any GitHub issues that might be assigned to me.
So you just had to click ask.
Yeah.
It asked you if you wanted to connect to GitHub.
Great point. Yeah. So but something that's really important here for us is that we value transparency and security and all of those big things when we're accessing anything that's external or anything, sometimes MCP servers plug into external tools, and we want to make sure that you have fine-grained control over what's actually happening within the IDE. So we have, you notice this has happened, now it's happening again. Before Copilot does anything on your behalf, you're actually going to be prompted to allow and make sure that you just really have that fine-grained control over any command line functions that are running or any tools that are being run on your behalf. So that's awesome. It looks like Copilot was able to really easily pull in. See, here is that add package or add product details page functionality. We can see it's pulling out some details from that spec that I had written up. So that's really great to see that, I can get all of that directly in Visual Studio without even having to open up GitHub at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to ask Copilot to help me implement this feature. So let's see. In this repo. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what's happening behind the scenes here. So like I mentioned, MCP tools or MCP servers can provide a set of tools that are going to expand the functionality of Copilot. But we actually also have a really awesome set of built-in tools. And the idea of tool calling is something that isn't exactly new to Copilot in Visual Studio. It's just expanded by MCP. So we have these, if we go down here, there's a lot of GitHub server tools, but we have these built-in tools for GitHub Copilot. So through the process of tool calling, when you send a prompt to Copilot, it's actually going to analyze your prompt, take a look at, okay, what needs to be done here and what are the things that, what are the steps that I'm going to take to accomplish this task? And then it's going to go through those available tools and actually try to decide, okay, what are the tools that I need to use to accomplish this task based on the prompt that was given to me? So these built-in tools are really helpful for doing things like editing files, finding files, getting errors, and doing things that are specific to Visual Studio, but giving capabilities of MCP servers just helps to expand that tool set and move it beyond what's exclusively inside of Visual Studio. So let's see what kind of progress we're making here.
Looks like it's got a good plan of what it needs to do.
Yeah, but that's one of my favorite things about agent mode is that it's very, detail oriented, and it gives you steps of like, here's how I'm going to execute the task at hand. And it's planning out what it does before it actually does it. So it's still implementing here. And it looks like first we have Copilot is starting to create a product details page. So I'm actually going to click in here and take a look at what it's doing. So we're generating some code to see that those product details. I think it's probably seeding some data because this, as I said, this is a little bit of a from scratch project. So we're generating a little bit of sample data to be included in here. And it looks like it's making a lot of really great progress. We got some warranty information, and it's just implementing based on the spec that I had at hand. All right, let's see what we have here. Still generating some new files for the feature.
So it started with a razor, and now it's going in and creating some CSS to make sure that razor is pretty.
Yeah. Another thing I want to highlight here, now we're getting into some of the actual, we were generating some of those new features from scratch and generating those new pages. But what happens when we actually have to edit files that already exist? I know when GitHub Copilot was kind of a newer thing, and it was newer to Visual Studio, we started to see that sometimes maybe code was being generated and it wasn't being put in the right place all the time. So we actually introduced this concept of code mapping, where we are trying to ensure that, the code not only is being generated correctly, but it's also being put in the right place in the file so that it's not going to break anything else. And it integrates really well into what you already have. So the process behind it is that I'm going to show you here. Click into this file where we have a little bit of changes happening on the home page. So we have two models that are going into the code mapping process. First is a smaller model that goes in and reads the entire existing file, and it's going to find that right spot where the code snippet should belong. And then after that, once the snippet has been determined, it acts kind of like a GPS. So once we have the right place that we want to go, then the larger model is going to kick in, and it's actually going to generate that code snippet for you and make sure that everything is working not only correctly, but also in the right spot in your code. So that's awesome. And I'm really glad that we've made those improvements to make sure that we have working code every time. So now we can see that it's building my project. The build was successful. And then even after building the project, so it looks like it did a little bit of a check-in point. So it implemented some of the feature, and it was like, it thought, okay, maybe I should try building the feature and make sure that I'm having some stable progress and everything is working before going ahead and making more changes to the project. So as we can see, it's it executes things in steps, and it actually is making sure that everything works along the way before jumping on to other tasks. And it's iterative. So say up here, I noticed that we were having some errors. We couldn't read errors here, but then it tried again, and it worked the second time. So it's awesome to see that, if it doesn't work the first time, Copilot's going to keep iterating on it and try to get you to the right destination before, it doesn't just give up. It's gonna try to get you there however it can.
It will keep going until it has accomplished the task that you have given it.
Exactly. So we've got agent mode, just excellent implementation summary. At the end, it's going to give me a nice little summary of all of the core requirements that I had defined in my spec. It looks like they've all got checks next to them. We've got a really detailed summary of exactly what it did and how it did it. We can see here we've got enhanced features.
Went back to the original acceptance criteria in the GitHub issue and made sure that it accomplished everything that you had asked it to do.
Exactly. So yeah, it looks like it did a really great job of implementing everything that I had in my spec here. So just going to take a quick little look through. I'm pretty comfortable with everything here. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep those changes.
So you can keep all of them there. You could also go and accept them individually if you wanted to look at each page, right?
Yeah. In the interest of time, I'm going to just save them, all. But, since I'm doing that, I also want to put in another level of checks to make sure that everything is working in my application and that when I go to build it, it's going to still work for me. So that's where tests come in. I am going to try to generate a couple of tests. I just want to show you guys in the repository here, I have a tests project, and we've already got a couple of tests here. I'm going to look at this. So we have some existing tests for this project. So I'm going to go in and see if I can have Copilot generate some tests for this new feature that I've added. So let's try generate tests, new feature. So this is really helpful when you're maybe you've generated a new feature and you've got all of this new existing functionality, but now I need to generate tests. And I know that's an issue that a lot of us deal with when we're developing, and going back and writing tests for a feature that we just finished sometimes feels like an afterthought. So that's where I really love to use Copilot, because it just makes that whole process a lot easier. And it just gives you a starting point. Even if maybe it gives you a couple of example tests, you can always build on it and start thinking about other ways that you want to test your project. But it's so awesome to see that Copilot can help you to get a starting point when you're starting to think about testing your feature functionality. So we're adding some tests.
So this one, it identified that that's a front end. So it asked to add a B unit project. which is pretty awesome. Identified that it needed to add B unit.
Yeah. It seems like it's doing a really thorough job of like identifying the right
laser. It identified that your tests are an X unit and it didn't try to write MS test tons for you.
Yeah. We're making some awesome improvements in the testing space with Copilot. So we're creating a test class for product details. Yeah, it seems like it's being really thorough about planning out its actions and then executing on them, which is really awesome to see. Yeah, we wouldn't want it going in blind.
While it's processing, I see you're using Claude Sonnet 4.
Yeah.
You want to talk about why that one and what are the other options that people might want to choose?
Exactly. So we've got a whole bunch of models that are available for you to use when you're writing code with agent mode in Visual Studio. For me personally, I've found that Claude Sonnet is just one of the fastest. And I think that it works really well when I'm generating code in agent mode. I think that it does a great job of, like I mentioned, some of that iterative and that planning phase stuff. I think Claude Sonnet 4 does a really great job of some of that stuff. If any of you guys catched the keynote earlier, you can see now that you can actually expand your set of models beyond what is offered in this list here, and you'll be able to bring your own key. So if there's any models that you personally really like and you have an API key for, you can now plug those into Visual Studio and expand your model set even more beyond what's the initial offering. So it's really cool to see that we have all of that customization available for you in Copilot.
And what do those numbers next to them mean?
Oh yeah, so those are actually the amount of credits that it's going to use when you have a Copilot subscription and you have a certain amount of credits that you can use. So 1x is basically it's a little bit more expensive in your credit count. So I think Claude Sonnet is a little bit more expensive. If I wanted to use like GPT-4.1 or GPT-4o, those might use a little bit less of my credits. But I'm balling out over here, and I just like Claude Sonnet.
Yeah. So GPT-4.1 you could use free. With the free, it's not gonna take away any of your token usage. You can use as much of 4.1 and 4.0 to your heart's content and never reach a token limit and have to go up to another premium version of Copilot. When you start using Gemini or Claude Sonnet, then that's where each request is going to start ticking away at your token limit. And could reach a point where you'll run out. And so you'll want to be careful when using those if you're on one of those plans that has that token limit, especially if you're using the free version.
Exactly. So we're generating some really thorough tests over here. It looks like we've got like 204 lines added, 244, 236. We got a whole bunch of different types of tests being added too. Being really thorough here. Let's see.
I always found front-end tests are the hardest to do. And the fact that it brought in B unit and is doing full Blazor integration tests there is pretty cool that it has that ability.
Exactly. Creating unit tests. Yeah, it's not stopping at just one type of test. It's really going into the whole nitty-gritty. Love the thoroughness. Let's see. Maybe we can let this run here, and then I'm going to jump into some of the slides around best practices, just so that we can keep moving here.
Check on it when we're done.
Yeah, we'll check on it once we go through some of the best practices information. So I just have a couple of tips here now that we've seen, all of the really awesome in-editor features that we have specifically with .NET. And we also have some really awesome new functionality being added with agent mode and MCP. There are a few best practices and tips that can help you to make sure that Copilot is doing its best work and following whatever standards and practices that you like to use. So let's jump into it. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about effective prompting strategies. So like you saw with the GitHub issue that I gave, it was pretty lengthy. It had a lot of context and it had a lot of detail about what the things that we wanted to see from Copilot in the issue were. So we have, I think that basically just being really clear and really detailed with Copilot. So that issue went in directly as part of the prompt and part as context. So if you want something specific, try to be as clear and as detailed in your prompting as you possibly can, just so that we can ensure that Copilot's doing the right thing. Because if it doesn't have that context, it might just start making things up on its own and going. So we want to just make sure that you're being as clear and detailed as possible.
So you could say, create a details page for my product, and it's just going to create a details page for the product. It's not going to look like how you want it to look. It's not going to do all the extras of connecting it to all of the other pages, making sure that you can get to it from the favorites and from the product page. All of those steps that she included, make sure that Copilot knows this is the full set and not just create a page.
Exactly. And something that I really like to do, just a tip as well. So if you're trying to understand if you have a prompt crafted out for maybe how you want to execute a certain feature in Copilot, a tip that I've found that can kind of help you to understand how your prompt will be received by Copilot before you actually send it in agent mode and go through the effort of, doing all of those tool calling and all of those tasks is I like to send the prompt in agent mode in ask mode first and ask, okay, here's my prompt. How would you go about this? Or how would the model that I'm planning to use in agent mode, I can ask it in ask mode. How would you go about this? And then you can get an understanding of, how your prompt will be received before you invest the effort and maybe the tokens and stuff into trying it out in agent mode.
You can also, it's a pure programmer, right? So you can also ask it to help you write the prompt. I want to create a details page. Help me create the prompt so that I get everything that I want out of it. And it'll ask you questions back. I need these details to understand what you're looking for. Exactly. And it can help craft the best prompt.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's actually what I did. Like I mentioned with my GitHub issue, I actually had Copilot help me write up the spec for that GitHub issue for the feature. And it just made it all that more detailed and specific. That's the first tip that I have. The second tip is around providing context. So like you would see in the chat window, we have a whole bunch of different ways by using the hashtag or different ways that we can reference specific context. So if there's a certain file or a certain class or a certain something that you want Copilot to go after, mentioning that explicitly as a part of your prompt it's never going to hurt. It's just going to make sure that, it's another way to make sure that we're targeting the right things and Copilot is going to actually execute on the task that you want it to execute on. And also providing context, another really great way that we can do that. I know I mentioned before, I love MCP. Using MCP tools and MCP servers is another really great way that you can incorporate more context from outside of your IDE directly into Visual Studio, and it'll just really make your responses that much better. And the last thing that I'm going to touch on a little bit here, if you can see on the side of the screen, we have a screenshot of an example Copilot instructions file. And custom instructions really allows you to automatically kind of add pre-specified contextual sort of constraints or anything. You can kind of jot down anything in a custom instructions file. So you can write down, like we have here, we have the target framework, we have the C# language version, anything that's going to help Copilot put itself in the right context and understanding really what it's going to do is really helpful here. Also, any like features or any sort of paradigms or styling things that you like to use in your code, I love to jot those things down in a custom instructions file. It just really makes sure that Copilot understands, where you're going with your code base, and it understands the full context of how you like to code so that it can implement those things correctly. So custom instructions is provided as context automatically for every prompt that you send. So anything that you want Copilot to know off the bat for any prompt, you're going to throw it there. Next thing I'm going to talk about, I have some tips for staying up to date with the newest Copilot features. I know the space is moving really quickly. So we have a lot of new Copilot features coming out. It feels like pretty much every day now. So we're getting new features and improvements to enhance your productivity and your coding experience, specifically in Visual Studio. Again, if you saw the keynote earlier, we're shipping pretty much monthly now with new releases and new features. So staying up to date on that can be another task for you. So
You're on the previews, so they're coming out weekly.
Yeah, that too. It's even more if you're on previews. But yeah, keeping your extensions updated and regularly updating Visual Studio, it's really just going to make sure that you have access to the latest features and that you're really using the best of the best when you're taking advantage of all that Visual Studio has to offer.
And a lot of things come turned off for Copilot first. And so when you do update, I highly recommend going back into that settings and checking to see if there's anything new that you might want to turn on and try out. And it gives you the control on these new features, as especially if you're in the preview channels. So we're still working out and getting to the point where we're going to GA those. Yeah. Give them a try. Give us feedback on how they're working. But yeah, sometimes a lot of those will start off, so we'll want to check there.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm just going to bring it back to MCP again. MCP is one of those features that you have to enable. So definitely be on the lookout for that one. So I'm just going to conclude a little bit here. Like I mentioned, Copilot just really is transformative in .NET development. It's something that is going to allow you to boost your productivity and just move even faster. It gives you a pair programmer and something just to help you out with, following best practices, fixing errors, refactoring, all of the things that maybe take time out of your day and aren't the most fun to do. That's really where Copilot shines, in my opinion.
And it allows you, with all the MCPs, it allows you to stay in Visual Studio instead of having to jump out to your repo to create those issues or to check on an issue. It brings you right in.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Checking back in on agent mode. Now we're going to run those tests, and now we're being really thorough with the test generation, and we're actually going to run them and see if they pass. So we're doing a second layer of checks on that feature that I just developed, and we're going to see if things are actually working.
So it looks like it created 3 test files with hundreds of lines, checked to make sure that they all build, and now it's doing .NET Test.
And it looks like the build actually failed at first, and we made some additional edits here. So we're being iterative in the process and making sure that everything works. There are some test failures, but most tests are passing. That's okay with me because, I didn't write the feature. But we can keep letting Copilot iterate on this. I'm actually going to go ahead and run the project just so we can take a look at what the feature that Copilot actually implemented is. And I click allow and let's see.
And then drop down that she keeps saying allow this time. There's an option to say allow in this session.
Yeah.
Is there?
Or always allow.
Always
yeah.
Allow.
So you don't have to keep accepting every time.
Depending on how you're feeling that day, you can have it do it all for that session. Look at this. So if you want to go get coffee and let it run.
So it looks like we have a really solid base here of, what that product details page is going to look like. Obviously, I didn't give all of the details for each project or each product. So we have some question marks and some, placeholder information, but it's a really great starting point for me as I'm implementing my eShop repo here. I can fill in and I can edit things as I want, but it just made it a whole lot faster. If I was going to build this from scratch, it would have taken me, God, I don't know how long. But look at that. It did a pretty good job here of implementing the feature that I asked for. I'm pretty happy with what we have here and the magic of agent mode.
Awesome. So now can we take this all the way back to your repo?
Yeah. Let's see. We're still running commands.
It will continue trying until you tell it to stop or it has accomplished the task. And having not passing tests is not happy.
Yeah, exactly. Looks like I can't find any other tests. I'm just going to let this keep running. I'm not going to keep you guys here any longer, but I think that's all I have today as far as some of the agent mode and MCP features that I wanted to showcase. So I'm going to jump back to the slides. Maybe once we finish up the slides here, I can jump back and see if we've made any more progress.
With the GitHub MCP, this allows you to then say, okay, can you commit these changes?
Yeah.
It can create, and I think they showed this morning, there's the in product code review feature that has Copilot do an initial pass to, not miss anything that you might have accidentally put in or catch any style issues and those types of things. So Copilot can take you all the way from idea inception all the way through to getting your commit out to back to the repo, and eventually out into productions.
Yeah. The GitHub MCP server is one of my favorite ones to use. Yeah, we could also go ahead and create a commit, like you mentioned, to really bring this full circle.
Yeah. And there's also an Azure MCP server that is out there that can help you actually get this stuff into a test Azure environment, into an Azure container service, and really see how things are going. So you've got the full cycle of assistance with Copilot.
Exactly. Yeah. The list of MCP servers right now is endless.
Exploding.
Yeah, definitely check out the GitHub repo if you're interested in seeing what other functionality we have available. But here's the session survey. If anyone wants to give any feedback, we really appreciate that. Stay connected and keep learning. If you missed any of the other sessions today, we have a link here that can help you to watch any of the live streams or VS Live videos on demand after the event. I think we're just going to open up the floor now for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, we'd love to hear them.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got a mic coming your way.
Who was it down here? With the development of the tests, are you seeing what kind of code coverage are you seeing? What kinds of negative tests? How effective is it without being like directive of how deep you want the testing to go?
Yeah, exactly. So I gave it a pretty basic prompt of, generate tests. So it's going to be pretty base level to start off, I would imagine. We can actually take a look at that if you want. But I think if the more specific you are, like I mentioned in some of the tips, the more, you can also specify what kind of tests you want and then, how you want it to actually go about them. The prompt I gave was pretty basic. So I feel like I would guess that they're maybe a little bit, early coverage, but.
From my experience, when you do a basic just generate tests for this feature, it does a pretty decent job of getting you to about 70% coverage. We are in the process of working on some tooling for test generation specifically that is coverage based. It makes sure that it's doing negative tests in all of the gamut to make sure that you've got a full test suite. That is not ready yet. But the base one does a decent job of getting you a good start.
Yeah. And it looks like here we have a little bit of a summary. So it looks like it generated 139 total tests. 2 of them are failing due to minor rendering issues. And you can see kind of the features that it's covering here. So we've got a little bit of a summary.
Yeah, it does a really good job of checking for nulls and for missing content and all. I use this extensively to generate tests. It used to be the test PM, so it was kind of my go-to thing to do. It does a decent job of getting you a good way there. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we'll start in the front here.
Just a question about rules. So I could see that rules may need to be scoped at various levels, like maybe as a department, as a team, as a project. Is there any thoughts on how that can be differentiated between those scopes? Like
the custom instructions?
Yeah, I might not want my department rules inside every repo that I work on.
Well,
but right. I would want to be able to reach out and obviously get them, and then team, and then of course the project, the requirements and stuff I would want. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So we actually have different levels for custom instructions files. So you can specify them at the repo level, at your user level, and then you can commit them to your repository if you want to share them with coworkers, or if you want to keep them just, if they're personal preferences. But yeah, you can specify them at different levels of your project to kind of keep them at whatever level you want to. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So one of the things that's coming to, think the next version of Visual Studio, I'm not sure, but I know it's in the works, is the ability to define different levels of custom instruction files. So you can do custom instruction files that apply to only Razor files, that apply to only JavaScript files, that apply to only TypeScript files, that apply to all my CS files. And then you've got the generic apply to everything. And so Copilot is going to grab the instructions based on the criteria that it sees it needs for the question that you asked. Now, when you're talking about levels outside of code with kind of policies for your company, that's kind of going to be on what your best practices are. What we're seeing a lot of different companies doing are trying it out, right? They have somebody who's like, these are the things that we think should be in every repo, right? And that's the base set of Copilot instructions that are applied and sit in that GitHub folder for everybody. And then you add on those repo specific, more coding specific ones for the more specific stuff.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I think there's a gentleman in the back with a question. Yep. Back in.
Hi. Quick question regarding those who are using Azure DevOps still.
Yep.
But using Visual Studio, so we don't necessarily have, a GitHub Copilot dashboard or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is some advice for those people?
As far as like the MCP servers?
No, onboarding in general. Like, if you don't have, you can't have it's weird. Like GitHub Copilot seems to have nothing to do with GitHub in some ways, but if you don't have GitHub, you can't have GitHub Copilot.
Yeah, you don't need to be in a GitHub repo to use GitHub Copilot. You just need to have either a GitHub or a Google account.
Yep.
And so if your repo's in Azure DevOps, as long as you have either a GitHub account or a Google account, you can use Copilot on those Azure DevOps repos. We have thousands of engineers using Azure DevOps repos here at Microsoft with Copilot on a daily basis. It works great.
Yep. And there's also an Azure DevOps MCP server, so you can use all of that awesome functionality by pulling in, your issues and all of that stuff. You can do that with Azure DevOps as well. Yep. Anyone else? Cool.
In the center?
Oh, wait. Is there another hand?
Yep.
I'm doing this MCP server with Azure DevOps, but I just struggled with it for the last 30 minutes.
Really? There should be a definition of the Azure DevOps MCP server on the GitHub repo. We can check that sort of guidance here. We're still kind of ramping up our MCP story, but there should be copy and paste that MCP JSON configuration into your local file, and then it should work. But I can help you out with that if you're having some issues. Yeah. Okay. Another question.
So what if we don't use Azure DevOps or GitHub, but we pull it from someplace and we just have it on our local machine?
Copilot works regardless of where your code is. You don't have to have it in any repo.
Yep.
Okay.
Good too.
Awesome. I don't see any more hands. I am the PM specifically focusing on making .NET experiences with Copilot better for you. So if you run into any issues, if you have any suggestions, your desires, your wishes, I want to hear them all. And where I especially want to understand where it's not working for you so that I can make it better. So please, Wendy Briding, reach out, send me all of that information because I want this to be the best and most productive experience and tool for you all to use in your day-to-day development. And then fill out the survey, give us feedback, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.